In my book, there are 2 chapters on Scientology, one about Scientology itself, and another which is a case vignette of me working through a deprogramming intervention with a person that was in Scientology for 27 years. And he was about to go into Sea Org. He had been an outside a public member for many, many years. He'd taken courses. He spent a lot of money. He got his wife involved to some extent, his kids, but they didn't go all in. And so Scientology, in my estimation, decided we want him as a Sea Org member. And without exposing who he is, suffice to say, he had special skills that they could use and that would be very useful to them in the organization. And so he was signing his contract, his billion-year contract, and he was going to become a Sea Org member. And they told him, you're going to have to divorce your wife. So he served his wife with divorce papers. And I came in to do the intervention, which was successful. And it was very intense. I mean, his children were crying. His wife was pleading with him. And he thankfully stayed, listened. He could have left. He didn't. And the one thing that really got him was when we really talked in detail about the purification rundown. And I said to him, what if the basic assumption of the purification rundown is incorrect? And I showed him documentation to dispel the idea that toxins reside in fatty tissues of the body indefinitely, and that is just not science. And he more or less came to the conclusion, well, wait a minute. So you're telling me that the whole purification rundown is bogus, because if the toxins aren't residing indefinitely in the fatty tissues of my body, why do I even need the purification rundown to leach them out? And so what does that mean? And what I said to him is, it means that L. Ron Hubbard was wrong.
Right.
It means that L. Ron Hubbard in the 1950s or whatever, when he wrote the purification rundown and his quaint theory about what it's supposed to do and why it is necessary, he was wrong. And in fact, Narconon wanted to teach this, the principle that toxins, drugs reside in the fatty tissue of the body indefinitely. Narconon wanted to share that with school children in California. And eventually the authorities within the school system said, you can't teach this because we've got parents calling in, complaining to us that their children are terrified that at any given moment, these drugs that they've used over their life are going to come out and disrupt their day-to-day life because they're locked into the fatty tissues of the body. They haven't been properly purged, and they're subject to them coming out. And you're teaching these kids that this is reality when science says that's not so. Or after a certain period of time, drugs no longer are evident in the body through drug testing. We know that. And so why are you teaching that? You told us that you're not a religion, you're an anti-drug program. You offered to come in and help the kids for free, and we thought it would be okay, but we did question you. Is this a religion like the Church of Scientology? And you said no. And now we're telling you, don't teach this to the kids. And Scientology's response was, well, but that's what we believe. And so then the school was put in the position of, wait a minute, this is not supposed to be belief-based. That's religion. It's supposed to be factually based. That's helping the kids deal with drugs. And so when I talked about this with this man who had been in Scientology for 27 years, he came to the conclusion that L. Ron Hubbard was wrong. And then once that was the understanding, and we came to that conclusion regarding the purification rundown and its false premise, then he said, well, what does that mean? Because I talked to him about Isaac Hayes, and I said, look, Isaac Hayes said that L. Ron Hubbard's truth is the truth forever, that it cannot be adulterated, it's immutable. So what does that mean? Scientology implies science is somehow the basis of Scientology. And yet, if science is in direct opposition to Scientology, and Scientology cannot evolve as science does when theories are disproved and you move on to the next theory and there's new evidence-based, papers that are published in peer-reviewed journals and so on. That premise that Scientology is based somehow on science is false.
Right.
I mean, it's just based on this quaint theory that Hubbard posited that, drugs are the coke you sniffed, the marijuana you smoked, the LSD you dropped, it's in your fatty tissues. Yeah. And we need you to go through this purification rundown so that you will be cleaned out. That whole process is based on a false understanding of the body, and science has disproven it. So once that cracked, that guy was able to sit back and say, wait a minute, L. Ron Hubbard isn't perfect. He made mistakes, and this is an example of a mistake he made. And if this was a mistake, then what else was a mistake? And he began to open his mind to reevaluating many other things. And that led to him basically breaking out of Scientology.
Wow.
Okay, if you want to see my rock and roll songs, click right on this guitar. And if you want to see a different one of my videos, then you could click right inside here. If you have subscribed or not, subscribe right here. Bye.